Hi Shruti. Hi Magesh. Hi Veena Chiti. Hello all. We're going to be having a conversation with Sreemathi Ramnath and her daughter Shreya. Um, so I'm really excited to be able to speak with both of them. I have so many questions that I've always wanted to ask them together, and I'm hoping to be able to do that this evening. I suppose you've all logged in from different parts of the world. So good morning, Shruti. And for those who have logged in from the US, good morning. Those from Europe, good afternoon. Hi, Varisha. Hi, Viji. Viji Ganesh is the founder of Panjavarnam Silks. And I'm so excited she invited me to host this conversation series for Panjavarnam Silks, which is a beautiful store in Mylapore. And they have presence online and you can shop for some fabulous saris. And if you ever want to kind of get some help with shopping, then Viji is always there to help you. I own a sari from Panjavarnam and it's really one of my all-time favorites. Let me just see if okay, Shreya's not here yet. Hi Sudharma. Please give me a moment. I'm just waiting for Sreemathi ji and Shreya to log in. How's it going, Sudharma? Please just... Hi, Nivedita. Please bear with me as we... Am I audible, guys? Are you able to hear me fine? Just a thumbs up. The new Instagram language. Instagram live language, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Just give me a second. I'm going to call Shreya. Shreya, we're waiting for you online. Sorry, everyone. I think they're having some issues joining, so please bear with me. Shreya, are you here? I can't see you. Hello? Shreya, are you here on Panjavarnam Silks? I can't see you. Okay, sure. Sorry, guys, we're having a little bit of a problem, but if you bear with me for just a moment. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me some questions and I'm happy to answer some on behalf of Panjavarnam Silks. They are just logging in for some, they're having some technical. I'm going to join with Panchavarnam Silks like manufacturer. Oh, is that so? That's great. I'm glad you logged into this conversation, so you'll know the type of people who shop there and their sense of aesthetics and stuff. So that's great. Where can I find an outlet shop of Panchavarnam? Vijay, do you want to respond to that? The store is in Mylapore. If you go to the website, you'll find the store. I mean, if you go to the website, you'll get the address of the store. And finally, Shreya has joined. So that's great. Yes, they custom design sarees. Yes, Shruti, I'm happy to put you in touch with Vijay. Definitely. Yes, just accept the invitation, Shreya. I have sent you an invitation. It says waiting for Shreya. Yes, Shreya, I've sent you an invitation. Just accept it. Okay, let me try this again, Shreya. So I'm sending you an invitation. All you need to do is just accept it. Okay, I'm inviting you to join this conversation. It says waiting for Shreya. Sorry, people.
Hi, Akila. Sorry.
Hi.
So sorry. We have clearly been
No
not
worries.
enough with technology.
No worries at all. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for this opportunity to talk
Oh,
about.
the pleasure is all mine. Thank you. And as always, you both are looking fabulous. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you see us or are we cut off or?
you are a bit cut off. Is there a way that you can keep your camera a little, higher if that's possible?
Yeah. I'll just figure that out. Yeah, is that better?
Is that better?
Yeah, much better, much better. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a part of Panchavarnam Silk's series called In the Company of the Saree. I'm personally just excited because I am in the company of the two of you. And for the longest time, I've known each of you individually, and it's very exciting to be able to speak with both of you together. So thank you for, I know that, Sreemathi ji, I know you had a kind of a busy day today. So thank you for making time and being able to do this.
Always for you.
Just allow me a moment to introduce both of you formally before we start the interview. I'll start with Sreemathi ji first. For those who don't know, communications and leadership consultant, writer and media person, Sreemathi Ramnath wears many hats and works in 3 languages, Telugu, English and German. Sreemathi wishes to describe herself as an interculturalist who thrives on differentness, who loves preoccupying herself with modes of engaging with cultural differences. And we're going to be talking about this, Sreemathi ji, as part of our conversation. As the founder and principal consultant of Immer Besser Consultancy and a CEO coach, she is retained by leading business houses in India, Europe, and Southeast Asia, and lectures at premier educational institutions, including the IITs and the IIMs. She's a faculty member with several corporate academies across the world, and is often invited as a keynote speaker at international conferences in India and abroad. an empaneled speaker and scriptwriter for Telugu documentaries at Films Division of India. Sreemathi has written and spoken for several documentaries. Welcome, Sreemathi ji. Shreya Ramnath is a PhD candidate in social anthropology at the Central European University, Vienna, where her research is primarily focused on the festivalization of classical music. This really struck me, and we're going to talk about this too, Shreya. Formerly a lecturer and researcher at the Asian College of Journalism, she also contributes to publications on arts and culture. She's an active vocal performer of Bhava and Bhakti Sangeetam. Welcome, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Akhila.
Thank you very much.
So when I was sort of gearing up for this interview, I thought of, I was thinking about what's the foundation that I can kind of peg this conversation on. And I thought about the word aesthete, and I looked up the dictionary just to get a sense of what it exactly means. And it said someone with a deep sensitivity to the beauty of art or nature. And I thought that every time I think of both of you in different contexts, the word aesthete is often something that comes to my mind. So I'm going to firstly start off this conversation by asking you, Sreemathi ji, could you talk to me about, your how you cultivated this sense of aesthetics and how you've nurtured it, and what's your relationship really with this word aesthetics?
Okay, before we move on to sort of engaging with the question, a request, just Sreemathi will be fine, no G.
Okay, done. That makes my life very easy. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Though I would like to enjoy the perks of being a senior, I don't like to be reminded of it. Anyway, jokes apart, to tell you the word estate, if you think that I am one, I feel very flattered. And I think in a way it's mission accomplished for my parents, because I think the word doesn't confine itself to art or, especially not performing arts. It's about the way you engage with life itself, how you find beauty in the normal and how normal is always beautiful for you. I'll give you an example. I think here I need to tell you a little bit about the environment where we grew up. It's a very typical middle-class home. My parents, my father, my grandfather were all writers, all Sahitya Akademi award-winning poets. This is a very key information to how the software went into me, because everything at home, we were asked to relate to it from the angle of how beautiful it is. Let me give you an example just to operationalize the abstract environment that I'm describing. My father was once leaving for the office, and my mother would always walk up to the doorway just to say bye to him. And she found that it started drizzling, and my father didn't have an umbrella with him. And he was walking ahead, and she called out to him saying, "Here, take the umbrella." And he just didn't even turn back. He waved to her saying, "Never mind, I'll squeeze my way through the drizzle drops, through the raindrop." I mean, just imagine the imagery of someone squeezing through the gap between the raindrops. So these are the kind of conversations that we would talk about. Or, I remember once we were discussing whether or not to buy it was a chungadi saree from Rangachari. It was a kind of a light, yelam vara yala, that color, light green, with a deep red border. My father, in love with it, he kept looking at it and he says, if a tender palm leaf were to chew the tambulam, this is how it would look. So these are the kind of, imageries, the way you engage with beauty. Or when we went into Nalli for the first time, I dragged my father to buy a saree for my mom for their 25th wedding anniversary. He hadn't stepped into a saree shop. They used to go to the loom, if at all, to buy a saree. Never a saree shop. So as soon as he went into Nalli, he got thoroughly sort of overwhelmed. And he looked at me and he said, "By any chance did an Indradhanus, a rainbow, crash land into the shop just now.
Wow.
Yeah. So these are the kind of, this is the engagement that, one has with color, with texture, with nature, with simple things like rain or, raindrops. So this kind of made the way we look at life, the paradigm has always, it's already been set, you know.
Right, beautiful.
And, perhaps maybe I should make it here. This is one contribution. And the second thing is I was lucky enough to early on to go for professional development courses to Germany, where, people looked at it as an exotic thing, your sari or the colors, because they're so different. So they made me aware of how special it is, the kind of thing we take for granted because ours is a continuing living tradition, whereas for them, it's a war savage, culture that it is. They know that when there is an abrupt cut to the history, they think of everything that's old as something that needs to be preserved. So that's an input that has also gone into me to appreciate things, practices, people, colors, saris, everything that's beautiful.
Right. Lovely. We're going to speak about, your relationship with language and poetry and literature as well. But I'm going to ask Shreya a question about, Shreya, for you, what has it been like really growing up in an environment like this with your mother as, a sort of role model, so to speak, with beauty and, empathy and sensitivity to everything around you? Like, talk to us about that.
I don't think I can remember a time when we weren't encouraged to find beauty around us, really. And so even growing up, I was acutely aware of the fact that we lived in a home where there was value in beautiful things, and they didn't have been expensive or difficult, things that were difficult to procure or had any sort of status symbol about them. But the fact that my parents, my mother had acquired, antique furniture from her stints in Ahmedabad and Baroda, or beautiful, or had framed vintage saris and they hung on our walls. So I think very early on, the value of these things was inculcated in us. And I was also quite aware of the fact that this wasn't necessarily the case in every household. And it allowed me, therefore, to enjoy it and to appreciate it much more. And and the fact that my parents had, lived all around. My mother would wear beautiful bandhani blouses and exquisite puttapaka cottons, starched, and go to work. And I would dream of growing up and wearing these starched cotton sarees and going to work. It's not something that happened, but that was the way I envisioned my future. And for me, when someone asked what beauty was, as far as sartorial beauty is concerned, for me it was a starched cotton sari. More often than an ikat blouse and a kanchi cotton or something like that, and not a new sari. It is a sari that has been worn and reworn.
Absolutely.
And as much as I romanticize the rustle of a new silk, there's nothing more beautiful than a kanjivaram silk that has been worn so much that it's pliable and soft and sort of melts on you like butter. So my grandmother's old saris, I would dream of wearing them one day, or my mother's. So I think, and it was not only my mother, our extended family, all of us, I think we really took a lot of pleasure in beautiful things. And after that extended,
not necessarily expensive.
Not necessarily.
And the thrill would be greater if we picked up something beautiful from the bazaar, which is from
absolutely
the pedestrian source, but a gem of a find. That would give us.
Yeah. I think there was also great pleasure and thrill in finding, unturning stones to find a gem. So a Pondi Bazaar necklace would be a very, very valuable find, and something that we'd hold on to and take great thrill and delight in that discovery.
So one thing we learned, I, along with my siblings, learned early on is that aesthetics has nothing to do with the material value.
Beautiful, yeah.
completely removed from the intrinsic material value. It is something independent. It's a pleasure, like they say, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. So you paisa vasool, because every time my old furniture, I keep a look at it and I enjoy it. I think it's far, far more than covered its material value years ago. That's
right. Absolutely. Srimati, at this point, I want to ask you about the word beauty. Shreya said very simply that for me, beauty is, simple, beautiful, starched cotton sari. This word beauty encompasses so many things. It's not just one thing, right? I want to ask you, if you were to actually deconstruct the word beauty, right? How would you do that? And what would be your take on the very idea of beauty?
I must say it's a very dynamic, what shall I say, relationship that I have with beauty. As I am growing, as my life experiences change, my definition of beauty has changed. Today, I call less is more. Less is more. I like understated stuff. But having said that, I always found beauty for the sake of beauty is wonderful to enjoy, but it may not be sustainable unless it serves a purpose. In other words, I feel beauty with integrity. In this case, an integrity is a piece of beauty. If it can be converted into something that serves a purpose, it could be a vessel. It could be a piece of furniture. It could be a tablecloth. It could be anything. That's to me a fundamental definition of something that is beautiful, that is sustainable, that stays forever. And manifesting itself in different avatars as we go.
Right. When you talked about how you find so many things beautiful, I was just suddenly thinking of Mary Kondo, and she talks about finding joy in and retaining and keeping things only that are beautiful. It's also, if you have so many things, but you find joy in everything that you see. Did I lose you for a second? Did you hear me?
Absolutely right. Akhila, there you touch a very important aspect of my own development now. I must say, as I was young, I wanted to possess everything that was beautiful. I wanted it in my home. I wanted a beautiful sari, saying, how wonderful it would be if I do not want to own everything that's beautiful. I admire it, and I feel that it is inorganic to just accumulate things for the sake of accumulating. When you need a sari, look for the most beautiful. I think it's as gratifying to see a beauty as it is on me. I think today I've reached that stage where, in fact, I feel so delighted to see beauty, not on me.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask people who are watching, there's some internet connectivity issue at your end. So I just want somebody who's watching to just tell me, are they able to hear Sreemathi and Shreya fine? Because I'm having some trouble. Can somebody just comment, please? Okay, nobody is, so that means we're doing okay. Shreya, so I know I follow you on, okay, one specimen says they can't see you properly, but I seem to be able to see. Yes, everything is perfect. All right. Yeah, they can. All right. Shreya, I follow you on Instagram, and I often notice your pictures, and somehow there's a very, very distinct quality in your pictures, which I always think is an extension of one's own personality in some sense. And I always love how you find beauty and simplicity in the pots and plants around you, in your cats and kittens. How has appreciating beauty and simplicity and all its glory shaped you as a person, Shreya?
I think simplicity is a value for me that is not restricted to only enjoyment of beauty of the material, but in enjoyment of the arts, and and of much more. For instance, I think the idea that simple and accessible and straightforward and understated is beautiful translates itself for me into how I enjoy literature, how I enjoy music, and how I enjoy, I mean, all other kinds of art. So I also aspire to write simply and write accessibly and in a way that people can understand, because I think it's most difficult to articulate complicated thoughts in a manner that is accessible and straightforward. And I think, bombastic, whether it's music or language, obfuscates, to use more bombastic language, obfuscates rather than reveals. It's hiding what you're trying to say in big words and big ideas, rather than simply telling a story or bringing across a point. And so I think, and even music, when something very complicated and complex is interspersed with something that's simple and lilting, it brings into relief that which is complex and complicated, and it becomes easier to understand. And I think that's true of, I mean, the way I engage with all arts. And it's also very important for me to follow this principle in anything that I attempt to create, whether it's writing or musically or photography even. Absolutely. So I mean, I noticed recently that my frames often have a lot of negative space, it's called, because I like to bring into relief something that's beautiful rather than crowd the frame with everything that's beautiful. And I think it's only the juxtaposition of the empty with the full that allows you to appreciate the full. So,
the relationship.
Absolutely.
It becomes your ideology, I think, no? Your relationship to beauty becomes your ideology in a way, and your personality, it reflects.
Right.
Sorry to have interrupted.
No. Shreya, is there a way you could change the setting from, are you on a cellular data right now or Wi-Fi?
No, I'm on Wi-Fi, but I can check once again. Just a second.
Can you just see, because the images are super blurred. It's blurred now. I know. We can't see them. Yeah. Okay. Shreya left and she'll probably log back in. There she is. Definitely. About her jewelry, for sure. You can't see Sreemathi, ma'am? Well, I'm waiting for them now. I know, right? It's super unique, yeah. Okay, I'll turn off commenting, don't worry. You mean mine? Sonali, you mean this? Yeah, this is my mother-in-law's really, really old sari, and I totally relate to what Shreya was saying about old and worn. It's so soft. It's just literally sliding off. It's beautiful, yeah. Ugh.
Hi, Akila. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
No problem at all.
Is it better or is it the same?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually it settles itself. Sometimes, if you change just the, the setting from Wi-Fi to cellular data, it gets better.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll continue with the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. Sreemathi, I want to talk to you about, when we talk about, you said you like to describe yourself as as an interculturalist. Culturalist, did I get that right? Who thrives on differentness.
Yeah.
Can you please explain that a little bit? I mean, I found that super intriguing. I think I have some sense of what you're trying to say, but I thought it would be lovely to get it, to hear it from you.
Yeah, interculturalist is the new, what shall I say, new expert that the globalized world needs. In the way it can, let me tell you, my role is to foster and build bridges of understanding between people who are trying to collaborate, for instance. So that's
Right.
that way. Since they work across cultures, it's called intercultural communication. And somebody like me who's engaged in a work like this is described as interculturalist.
Right.
And when I say I thrive on differentness, it's because I always loved differentness around me, be it, the multitude of colors or languages, because I speak Telugu. I was born and raised in a Tamil speaking, and I studied German. I went to a Telugu school, but learned English. So the multiple languages, multiple friends, and everything had to be different in order to stimulate something in me. It energizes me. The sameness and if everything is the same, it doesn't kind of kick in that energy in me.
Absolutely.
Apart from that, I must also say that I've really come to believe that when differences are bridged together, when people with different attitudes, different skill sets, and different strengths come together and work on a project, the quality of the end product is way superior to what it would have been then. So that's what I meant to say. And I also must tell you here, when I started my work some 25 years ago, people would say, oh, we have to think like this culture, let's say Americans, or we have to work like a culture like Germans. So it's mercifully not anymore. I'm a great advocate of diversity. And I would say that never use words like tolerance and empathy, like tolerating differences. To me, differences are not bad smell for you to tolerate, or nor is it a disease for you to manage. So it has to be something that you invite, that you celebrate, and you leverage for the common good of both of you. So that's been the kind of,
Lovely. I also want to ask you a question relating to that. I really want you to talk about, you have a full-fledged career, career in the corporate world, and you also are constantly talking about the importance of culture, right? So I want to talk to you about how these two intersect in a sense.
I don't see them as two different worlds, because I think it's me. It's just like I speak different languages to my children, my husband, and in my workspace. It's the different respects. And as far as many people ask me, how do you find time? And I think, to me, rest has been change of work. So when I'm a little tired with my corporate work, I do something with literature or something with, art. That kind of gives me kind of, refills my batteries. And I'm again ready to take on my work. I think you will always find time for something that you enjoy doing. It's as simple as that. Everybody does it. It's no big.
Right. Absolutely. Shreya, I want to talk to you about, what drew you to pursue your doctorate in social anthropology. And you also told me that your research is on the festivalization of classical music. Can you please elaborate on that? And also perhaps make a little comment on the festivalization of the arts, so to speak, in the current context, right? In the lockdown context. I'd like to get your, perspectives on that as well.
I think what drew me to academia, of course, was the environment I grew up in. Both my parents are, they've always advocated for learning, and my brother is a historian, and so I think it was only natural. And there was a brief stint that I did in teaching, and I found it very, very gratifying and enjoyable.
Right.
And
Right.
I think this is really something I would like to do, which led me to do my PhD. Which I'm currently in the middle of. Also, I think we grew up in an environment where critical thinking and challenging ideas was very much part of living room conversation. I think we dissecting and challenging and thinking about everything, which often I think got quite annoying also. But it also, that's the environment we grew up in. So I think it was only natural that we. Can you hear me, Akhila?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just blocking a comment. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So, so I think it's quite, and also we've always, like she said, we've always been trained to appreciate, plurality of ideas and so on and so forth. So, which also sort of led me to wanting to learn other languages and to study abroad and work with different people. Yeah. So, to answer your question. I think it's very why I'm looking at festivalization of classical music is because I think the festival space is a very interesting, very dynamic space. I think there's been an explosion of festivals all across the world in the last couple of decades or so, especially in the last. And the festival zone, the area of the festival is a very interesting space because on the one hand, of course, it's a space for cultural regeneration, for urban branding, for environmental growth, for economic regeneration, even. So there are many points to the festival, but also in terms of behavior and identities, it is a place in which a number of people can collectively experience a certain art or whatever it is they're there for. And at the same time, it is also a place where they can renegotiate their identity. So when you're in almost a liminal space, it's sometimes it's a temporary space where you don't need to be who you are outside of that space, where you don't need to follow the rules and the norms of the space that you're otherwise in. So it is a space which allows for a lot of transgression of the usual behavioral codes and so on and so forth. At the same time, the festival is also the place where there is a reinforcement of your identity. For example, when I see the Margari festival, and there's a lot of debate about it, there is a reinforcement of your caste and your class, and your social and cultural capital. So I think it's a very interesting space where there's a constant negotiation of identities on the part of the producers, the organizers, and the consumers in the case of art. And of course, there's a lot of debate. The media is, of course, agog with discussion about, especially with new alternative festivals coming up and so on. In the case of classical music, about the re-evaluation of hierarchies within the classical, the difference between this gap between the highbrow and the lowbrow, reconfiguring artistic boundaries that have been unchallenged for generations, and the need to do it in order for art to become more accessible, more inclusive, and more democratized. And I think we're living through a revolution because there is so much, and also there's so much space. The cultural public sphere has extended beyond just a newspaper and the television. You have access to the public sphere in your hand. It's a tiny handheld device that gives you the space and the platform to say what you think about what's. And so there is so much debate and so many ideas, new ideas, creative ideas about how to bridge these gaps between the highbrow and the lowbrow, and between what is good art and bad art. And also, with globalization, I think we're all now omnivorous. We're all consuming more than one form of art. We're consuming everything, and there is value in the consumption of that which is not only your own. And I think so. So what happens then to specific festivals of specific art forms? When values and taste patterns and consumption patterns are changing. So I thought it was very interesting to see that. And in the context of the pandemic, of course, I think it's opened up huge number of questions, and yeah, and also I think it's going to be a very significant moment in the trajectory of the arts, really, because what the kind of power that social media has, and has sort of, lot of online fests like yours at Alap, they've really tapped into the potential of social media and making the classical music, which is otherwise considered exclusive and elitist, and also belong the realm, inaccessible, and relegated to a particular caste of people. It's suddenly become democratized. There is access. There is great. So there's scope for innovation. There's scope for experimentation. There is no. You're not bound by Arya Kudi's format. You're not bound by the concert stage. So I think there are avenues for departures and for innovation and exploration that perhaps have never really opened up before in the classical arts. And therefore, I think, of course, and this is because of the intersection of technology and larger global changes, global forces that advocate for diversity, and the pandemic. So it's a very interesting time with it.
Yeah, the decision has been taken out of your hands. I think the events that occurred over the last 3-4 months has they have an individual influence on the development of the art form beyond people, humans and minds and designer interventions.
Right. Shreya, I'm going to actually log out of the conversation, and we're going to re-log in because your video is completely blurred. It's a pity that people are not able to see you both. So I request all of you to please log in again, because there are 37 people watching. There were 56, and because I guess because of the blurred audio and video, people have. So I'm going to re-log in, and I'm going to invite you. Yeah. Thank you.
So sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem.
You want to do this?
Hi, sorry we had to disconnect. Prasanna. Yeah, I haven't forgotten. I'll ask Shreya that question. Sorry, I had to. Hi, Jyoti. This time, keeping my fingers crossed.
Oh. Hi, Akhila.
Hi, I can't see you.
Just do this. You're just trying to change the gadget.
No problem, no problem.
This is not exactly our day.
So sorry.
Today.
Yeah, that's
Sorry.
okay. Sometimes these things happen. Please don't worry. It happens very often.
Thank you for being so understanding. Yeah.
Really, don't worry about it. It's just an informal chat. So
Yeah, we'll just.
yeah, take your time. Hi, Nirmala ma'am. Okay, I'm going to invite Sreemathi to log in through her phone, hopefully. Yes. Now I see you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for waiting.
Okay. Okay. Sreemathi, I'm going to start off now restart this conversation by really asking you about, we talked about culture, and I want to talk about why do you think and consider the sari as such an important, like sort of an inherent symbol and carrier of culture? What is your relationship with the sari itself? I know you wear beautiful saris, and you talked about how your tastes have become a bit understated now, but I want you to talk about how the sari is an inherent sort of carrier of culture, so to speak.
Yeah, we talk about culture, when I
Srimati,
teach.
you have to be a little louder. We can't hear
Yeah,
you.
we talk about a metaphor of iceberg to describe culture. So everything that what is really culture is how you solve your problems, whom you respect, what kind of hierarchies you allocate to people, and the value system that operates you. But that's not visible. But what is visible in what you are, who Akila is your external. The language you speak,
Absolutely.
and the clothes that you wear. And it is a huge statement. And you can articulate your political leanings, you can articulate your religious beliefs, you can articulate your intellectual, what shall I say, priorities by choosing to wear a certain sari, for instance, or a certain dress for that matter. Like again, when you ask me these questions, it kind of makes me think a little more deeply about what really triggered this kind of a relationship. I feel perhaps it's because people who knew me as a child know that until I went to college, I wore nothing but khadi. We were simply
Khadi,
not
okay.
allowed to wear anything but khadi because my father
Wow.
was a freedom fighter, self-reliance was a motto. And we had in school a takili period, which means that we had to segregate the seed from the cotton, make those cotton rolls, make yarn, and it would be collected. And once in 2 weeks, the teacher would go to Khadi Gramodyog Bhavan and hand over the spindles. So
Wow.
this is the kind of, I never really thought too deeply until I was growing up and I saw all other children for Diwali wearing a twinkling nylon frock. That's when for the first time I went and asked my father, why can't we wear something like that? And, he tried to say, this is much more classy, this is this, that. And we were told the story of freedom struggle and all of it. And just to make that concession, I had to rope in a dear friend who's a kind of a role model for us to negotiate with my father that just on that one occasion, we would be allowed to wear the twinkling nylon frock along with the friends. And
Wow.
that's the kind of relationship. And so earlier on, very, very early on in my life, I realized that what you wear is going to communicate a message to people around you as to who you are and what you
Absolutely.
believe, what you stand for.
For.
So I started making very conscious choice of what I would pick up. But here I must also tell you, 3 siblings. My mother, we used to constantly share the half a dozen saris that my mother owned. So talking about sustainability, I feel today we have removed the sari out of its context and we've embraced it with huge love. But I wish we would look at the whole context and, buy the whole package. I'll explain to you, in Andhra Pradesh, the bride wears a white cotton, mind you, a cotton sari for the wedding. And the same sari she's supposed to wear and make it soft. And for the firstborn, make the unjal bed on the Namakaranam day.
Right.
And in my household, this old saris would be converted into quilts for babies. And for us, and they would be nicely worn, become soft and very absorbent, and they're 100% cotton. And this is a hell of a lot of importance given to recyclability, and also using your own imagination into converting the sari that has so many stories. Every sari has a narrative, right? So you make it into your firstborn's first bed, and then you make it into a quilt, and then the children get to know about it. It becomes the source of several stories, family heirloom, family lore, so to say. Who gave the sari, where it was bought, and because there were so few of them, we cherish them, we recycle them, and we reuse them. And today, what has happened is, because I'm talking about myself, is with affordability, with individualization, with financial independence, you will want to buy everything that you see. And therefore, it becomes just a collector's delight, which is also wonderful. I mean, it's giving a lot of employment to a lot of people, and you're carrying on and everything. But I would like people to use them more than one. I tell her, I said, any sari that you have not worn at least X number of times within 6 months, you have to wear it. It has to grow on you. It has to be a part of you. So, that's to me the definition of sustainable.
That's beautiful, actually. I mean, and I completely agree with you when you talked about how, in a sense, what you wear is who you are, right? That's a fabulous point. Shreya, please don't think I'm nitpicking, but the audio is very, very unclear, so you may have to be really loud. That's why I'm going so close to the camera. Just if you can be a little loud, Shreya. I want you to talk about how you have come to love the sari, and when did you discover the sari, so to speak?
Like I said, I grew up with all of these women, my mother and aunts and extended family, not only wearing the sari, but also delighting in the sari. They'd constantly go to these exhibitions, come back, and then there'd be these exchanges and reversals within that little thing. So there was a corpus of saris, and everyone would dip into it. And I grew up thinking that was how my wardrobe was also going to be like. Unfortunately not, but I do have my mother and my aunt's saris to dip into, of course. So very early on, I think I thought that the sari was very special, and I waited to I always waited to acquire and to possess and wear these saris. So much so, I still remember when I was 15, I had to, for some teachers' day or something, we lived in Bombay at the time. I insisted on wearing my mother's some starched Orissa cotton with a cotton blouse, and she told me it wouldn't be appreciated, and she was right. It wasn't appreciated. They called me Gram Sevika. They called me social worker. They asked me why I dressed older than my age and so on. But I think that's one of the only things in life that hasn't affected me. I'm quite sensitive to criticism and to comments, but I was very confident in my in the saris that I was confidence in my mother's taste, I think. So I said, okay, I can't be going very wrong. So I think, and today I find that people are wearing similar beautiful Orissa cottons and taking great pride in them. So I think there's a paradigm shift really in how we're seeing wonderful, great from looking at the handloom industry as languishing, even though it was once a statement of national strength and reliance, to something, an obsolete sunset industry, which is like an embarrassing anachronism in an India which is aspiring to be an international superpower. I think now we're looking at the handloom industry as it's become an interesting embracing of the tradition. I think the modern urban Indian woman now looks, how she is negotiating her modernity is really by embracing the local and the indigenous, which is a very interesting change, which is wonderful. At the same time, it's on the saris on ramps, it's haute couture, it's designers are using it. So sari is in vogue now, which is
it's really in vogue. And also there's a sort of a spirit of renewal and sort of revisiting identity, right? I feel like identity has become
absolutely, and it's no more relegated to the formal or the festive. It's seen as an everyday thing, and while I'm while it's thrilling to see this revitalization of the sari, it's also important to look at it
also important to understand that then we're only applying the lens of the urban middle class woman. Because it's important, I think, for us to remember that for the rural, semi-urban woman, millions of women across the country, the sari was never discarded.
Yeah.
It never stopped being a part of it did for us because in post-liberalization India, it was important for us to, integrate into a Western economy and to look a certain way. And we had the
Perhaps
access.
just to cut you here, I was just thinking it's so interesting as I listened to Shreya talk. It is not a coincidence that this evolution of the sari, this confidence of flaunting your sari in the public, the identity that you are embracing as an urban youngster, it's not by coincidence. It is in line with the new confidence that the young India has acquired in the eyes of the world. It reflects the same confidence, actually. It's, mutually supporting each other, I think.
Absolutely. And it's a very non-tentative and very confident adoption of a visible Indianness, which I think we didn't see in the early 2000s. It's only a very recent phenomenon. And I think that's a very interesting brand of urban Indian modernity. And
fabulous.
Also means that livelihoods are being supported, and the handloom industry is hopefully going to see better times, because we know that young people are giving up, and this is art which requires extraordinary expertise and knowledge and technique, and people are giving, large populations are giving that up to go to unskilled labor because they think that the sector doesn't have a future. So hopefully this will also mean a revitalization of that sector. So I think that is wonderful. And
also I need to that's about Shreya. So we all grew up, recognizing, spotting a particular weave, which state it is from, what is the technique. So the knowledge about Indian weaves was something that was cherished. And we thought that that was an important, aspect of our knowledge repository as we were growing up.
Right.
And also to add to how sari has become very modern here, I was just thinking in 1979 onwards, as I was in Germany, in a bitter cold, I wore my silks and with an overcoat, impractical as it was, hopping into the underground train, hopping off, climbing escalators. But I felt so proud because I stood out. Because I was so proud of who I was and that I was different and wonderful. But unfortunately today, blending in is more called for due to security reasons, due to several other psychological reasons. So today, perhaps I won't want to stand out in my sari. So what I choose is very different. It's something which is black or gray, but beautifully embroidered, or ajrak, or something that shows of smacks of Indianness and showcases the legacy, but yet kind of blends in, color palette wise with.
Right. Shreya, I'm going to ask you about your jewelry, because someone who was here wanted to know, where you bought that beautiful neck piece from.
What I'm currently wearing is from the roadside Ahmedabad.
Can we see it? Can we see it a little bit better?
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, wow. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, so we take great pleasure in scouring the roadside shops and scouting for finds. It's much more exciting than ordering something online.
Oh, beautiful. The workmanship.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Yeah. I just have a couple of more questions, because
Atla, can you see us?
I just want to ask you, Sreemathi, really, by virtue of diving deep into languages, you've obviously unearthed like treasure troves in like poetry and literature of the language. You cannot hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I was asking you about languages, and I was asking you about how, because you sort of deep dive into languages, you've obviously been able to understand a language in terms of, the literature, the poetry, and all of that. I also know that you're a CEO coach. do you think that in today's context, this deep diving is really important? And do you think that this is the world of specialists, so to speak?
I would not separate them at all. In fact, I am a great advocate of liberal arts being a part of the curriculum for that leads to a career in the corporate. I can explain to you why. I mean, perhaps you would know about Daniel Goleman and emotional intelligence. Those with emotional intelligence are far more sure to be a success at the corporate job than somebody with great IQ with Harvard first or IIT topper. That's what it's been empirically proven. So having said that, so why do we need to do that? Especially where in the globalized world, we are working with people who are so different to us, and where naturally, fear of the unknown is something that's been programmed into every human being. So the first response is being skeptical about people who are different, right? And how do you expect work, high stakes delivery when there is fear that's gnawing into? I mean, it's not small fear. This fear has led to xenophobia. It has led to this being erased. So we are talking about how to deal with this fear, and how else but to embrace the differences around you. In terms of color, in terms of nature, what happens is that sensitizes you to the softer aspect of life. It gives you empathy because it gives you the ability to put yourself into the shoes of a bird, a flower, extend it to a fellow human being, and the fear is diminished. And then you cross the threshold of fear, then begins the journey into exploring how do you make 1 + 1 11 and not 2.
Right.
So
That's lovely.
I'm not mutually exclusive at all. I don't know whether you
Okay,
remember.
that's really an interesting point. I didn't, think of it like that, but thank you for.
No, I must draw your attention to the Raymond's ad campaign that shows the CEO picking up a little hurt puppy on the road in a Raymond suit.
Yeah.
Complete man, it says.
Yeah.
So emotional intelligence is very much the key to your corporate success. And if you're not going to recognize that, you're going to stay far behind.
Yeah.
Because today, working with people who are very, very different from you, methodology, processes, everything is going to be different.
Absolutely. Shreya, I know that you're a writer and you have a thing for words. So I want to know that you also sing across many languages. You also sang a beautiful concert for Alap. I'm so grateful to you for that. And you sang across languages, and I noticed how, and those who watched it will agree, how beautifully, seamlessly you segued it from one language into another. And what really caught my, attention was how, your diction, pronunciation, like so accurate. I really want to understand, Shreya, that how do you kind of deep dive into it, and why is it imperative to kind of understand when you sing something, to understand the context, the meaning, the intonation, the metaphors, all of that, well, to be able to do justice to that song. Understanding it in its entirety, the language, right?
Yeah, I think thankfully I've always had a thing for languages. I've always been interested in learning different languages, so Tamil and Telugu and Hindi, of course, we learnt in school, and we watch a lot of Hindi programs, and so on and so forth. So I think there's always been, and because of my mother and her interest in languages and my grandparents, there's always been and my father also, in fact, there's been an interest in the other, an interest in something that, a curiosity about the other, and an interest, and not only in the linguistic aspect, but in social linguistics as well. It's very interesting when we travel to listen to what people are saying. I've always enjoyed decoding signs on roads. It's always been something that I've enjoyed.
Shreya always did a fantastic take on how English is spoken in Australia, in UK, in the US. She would do all accents, and even as a child.
Yeah, so I think
Right.
it's always, and yeah, I used to be a mimic back in the day, but I think my ability to mimic fairly decently, if I may say so myself, has helped, also has paid off in the musical context, because when you're singing a Kannada song, you should sound like you're actually saying the words in
Yeah.
Kannada, and when
Exactly.
you're speaking Hindi, it should sound like it should sound natural
You
and
sound
organic.
like, yeah, you sound natural.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is important really to emphasize here is that a lot of homework and research goes into it. Because I know for instance, when I picked the Bengali song I liked very much, I sent it across to my brother who does read Bengali, and then but he didn't understand all the words, but he wrote it to me in the Devanagari. And then we sort of sat down together and tried to understand what each word meant, and then understood from that context in which it is sung. And similarly with the Telugu, a lot of the Telugu compositions that I choose to sing, they aren't picked up only for their musical aspect, but also for the lyrical value, what it means, and then who wrote it and at what time, and in what epoch that song belongs to, and what the socio-political context was at the time. I think all of that, if you don't know all of that, it's impossible to understand the inherent emotion within the composition. And I think that's what I mean when I say homework, because simply listening to a song and reproducing it probably won't do what understanding when it was written, by whom it was written, and at what point in history it was written really
Right.
does. And I mean, apart
Right.
from that, I simply enjoy the challenge of getting diction right. It's a lot of fun to sound
Right.
like a native speaker, and I enjoy that. So it's something I take great pleasure in doing. But apart from that, I think it's important for a Bengali song to touch a Bengali speaking person. I think I must be able to
Yeah,
sing it
absolutely.
so she understands and relates to it. And so then the very purpose of that composition and of rendering that composition is lost if it doesn't touch the person who actually understands the
Yeah,
lyrics.
finally music really needs to move, right? Yeah, yeah.
Language is not
Shreya,
just
would
the
it be
word.
too much if, sorry,
No, I said language is not just the words or the sounds, but it has a cadence that is characteristic to it. And if you don't get that, and that's very abstract, you either have it or you don't. So if you get the cadence, it sounds like a native speaker's speaking.
right, right.
Yeah, which
It's
is
so
always
beautiful.
fun.
Shreya, would
Yeah.
it be too much if we asked you to sing a little excerpt like of the Bengali song? Little quick
Sure,
2 lines?
I'd be happy to. Sure. I'll just. One second. কেমনে জানাবো বলো শ্যামারায় ব্যথা মোর, কেমনে জানাবো বলো শ্যামারায়, কেমনে জানাবো বলো শ্যামারায়, তোমার বাঁশুরি শুধু আমার তারালতা যায়, তোমার বাঁশুরি শুধু আমার কারালতা যায়, কেমনে জানাবো বলো আমারায় ব্যথা বলো, কেমনে জানাবো বলো আমারায়, কেমনে জানাবো বলো আমারায়. Is that okay or?
Wow, that was
Thank
just like so beautiful. And I must tell you, Shreya, that while you did say that it must move a person whose language is Bengali or who understands Bengali in its entirety, I want to tell you that your music has the ability to move like even a Tamilian who doesn't know Bengali is moved by it. So I don't know, we should have another separate conversation about your, your ability to move through music. So at this point, I think I want to sort of thank you for, taking time off and, really, really enriching us with your insights. I only wish that the video and the audio were much far better. And I do hope that we're going to be able to have another conversation, hopefully in person. And we get to watch Shreya in concert live, not Insta live. And I hope that we all, absolutely, and we all do think about so many really interesting things, both Sreemathi and Shreya, you shared. And I really want to kind of, I want to see how we're going to be able to maybe make the audio a little better, if that's even possible. And we will be sharing this conversation on Facebook as well. For those who missed, we'll upload it on YouTube. Thank you so much, really. And thank you to everyone who joined. We had a significant dip in the people who were watching because of the audio. But hopefully, but whatever I heard, it was so beautiful.
Akhila, and also for making us think about a lot of things we take for granted, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sreemathi.
Very insightful questions.
Yes.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you to everyone who joined in. We'll share this on IGTV as well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.